The first snow of November had begun to fall over North Vancouver when my phone vibrated in my coat pocket. I was standing beside the iron gates of Cedar Grove Academy, watching children spill onto the pavement in bright jackets. I expected a reminder from my husband about groceries, or perhaps another excuse for missing dinner. Instead, I found a message that seemed too cold to have been written by someone who had shared my bed for 13 years. I'm leaving for Portugal with Vanessa. I transferred the household money into an account you cannot access. The house and bills are your problem now. Don't embarrass yourself by trying to stop me. For several seconds, I heard nothing. Not the school bell, not the traffic on Lonsdale Avenue, not the shrieks of children catching snowflakes on their tongues. My hand tightened around the phone. Then a second message arrived. Our flight departs in 50 minutes. By the time you understand what happened, we'll be gone. My husband, Adrian Mercer, had always enjoyed delivering bad news as if it proved his importance. He expected tears, frantic calls, and promises that I would forgive anything if he returned. He had spent years teaching me that his decisions were final and my feelings were inconvenient. Before I could answer, my 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, rushed through the gate. Her knitted red hat sat crooked over her curls, and a cardboard model of a lighthouse poked from her backpack. "Mum!" She hugged me around the waist. "Did Dad message you? He said today was going to be unforgettable." I looked at her eager face and felt something inside me crack, but I refused to let Adrian's cruelty reach her in that parking lot. "Yes," I said, straightening her hat. "He sent me a message. What's the surprise? I'll explain at home." I looked at Adrian's words again. They were not merely heartless, they were confirmation, written, dated, and delivered voluntarily. I typed a short reply. "Thank you for confirming everything." I sent it, silenced the phone, and took Sophie's hand. "Come on," I said. "We have somewhere to stop first." Adrian believed he had just removed every choice I possessed. What he did not know was that 6 months earlier, I had stopped waiting for him to tell me the truth. Instead of driving toward our townhouse, I crossed the harbor and headed into downtown Vancouver. Sophie chatted about her lighthouse project while wet snow streaked the windshield. She did not notice that I checked the rearview mirror repeatedly, not because anyone was following us, but because I needed to see her safe behind me. I parked beneath a glass office tower. Upstairs, the receptionist at a family law firm greeted Sophie by name and offered her hot chocolate and coloring pencils. I stepped into a conference room and closed the door to my solicitor Priya Nanduri answered on the first ring. "He sent it," I said. "In writing?" "Yes. He named Vanessa, said he moved our money, and confirmed that he was leaving the country." Priya released a slow breath. "Do not argue with him. Do not warn him. Forward every message to me." "Has the transfer finished?" "We're checking." "Go home, take care of Sophie, and change nothing." There was no triumph in her voice, only the calm precision of someone watching the final piece of a dangerous puzzle fall into place. On the drive home, I opened Adrian's newest messages at a red light. There was a photograph from Vancouver International Airport. Adrian in a camel coat, Vanessa Lane pressed against his shoulder, both holding champagne. Vanessa had been the communications director at his property development company for 18 months. She wore the pearl earrings I had seen on a receipt Adrian claimed was a gift for a client. The caption beneath the photograph read, "Some people have the courage to choose happiness." Another message followed. "You should start looking for a smaller place. You could never afford ours without me." I took screenshots and sent them to Priya. "Where's Dad?" Sophie asked. "He's traveling." "For work?" I crouched until we were eye to eye. "Not exactly. I need a little time before I explain. But you haven't done anything wrong. Do you understand?" Her smile faded. "Is he coming back tonight?" "No, darling." She stared at me, sensing the truth beneath the words. Then she nodded and carried her lighthouse upstairs. I waited until her bedroom door closed before entering the small study at the back of the house. Behind a row of old architecture magazines was a fireproof document case. Inside were 6 months of bank statements, corporate invoices, emails, property records, and notes written in my own careful hand. At 7:14 that evening, Priya called. "The transfer cleared," she said. I closed my eyes. "All of it?" "Almost every dollar he could reach. He consolidated it exactly where we expected." "What happens now?" "Now the people who have been tracing it no longer have to search through 12 separate channels." After the call, Sophie and I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. She barely ate. Halfway through dinner, she asked, "Is Dad traveling with Vanessa?" I did not ask how she knew. Children hear names through doors and notice the adults their parents pretend are unimportant. "Yes," her eyes filled. "Does he like her more than us?" I moved beside her and wrapped my arms around her shoulders. "This is not a competition you lost. Your father made an adult choice, and none of it is because of you." That night, after she fell asleep clutching the sleeve of my sweater, I searched the house. At midnight, I logged into our joint accounts. The mortgage account contained $1,843. The emergency fund had been emptied. The savings we had described to Sophie as her university money was gone. Every withdrawal ended at one newly opened personal account bearing Adrian's name. Most abandoned spouses would have seen only devastation. I saw dates, reference numbers, totals, and a trail too clean to deny. I printed everything. The sound of the printer carried me back to the moment the deception had begun to reveal itself. I worked as a municipal cost analyst, reviewing budgets for bridges, libraries, and public housing. Adrian liked to tell people that I did paperwork for the city, as though my work involved filing forms instead of finding discrepancies worth millions. At home, however, he treated finances as his kingdom. "You make numbers complicated," he would say whenever I questioned a payment. "Let me handle the serious money." For years, I allowed the insult to pass because peace seemed more valuable than being respected. Adrian managed Mercer Urban Group, a development firm founded by his father. He moved money among project companies constantly and insisted that such transfers were normal. Then, one rainy evening 6 months earlier, I found 2 invoices in our home printer tray. Both were for $186,000. One came from a concrete supplier in Surrey. The other came from a consulting company registered on Vancouver Island. The descriptions differed, but the invoice number and typographical error were identical. I mentioned them over dinner. Adrian stopped cutting his salmon. The hesitation lasted less than a second. But I saw it. "Why do these companies have matching invoices?" I asked. He laughed. "Templates get reused. Even the same invoice number." His expression hardened. "Claire, you review city spreadsheets. You don't understand private development." Then he reached across the table and touched my wrist with artificial tenderness. "Stop looking for disasters where none exist." The next morning, both pages had vanished from the recycling bin. I had already photographed them. I did not confront him again. I met Priya, whom a colleague trusted, and brought copies of everything I could legally access. She introduced me to Martin Cho, an independent forensic accountant. For 90 minutes, Martin compared invoices, transaction dates, shell company registrations, and project payments. At last, he removed his glasses. "I cannot declare fraud from these documents alone," he said, "but these patterns are not innocent bookkeeping." Priya leaned forward. "From today onward, protect your income. Preserve records you already have permission to view. Do not enter restricted business systems, move his funds, or reveal what you're doing." I opened an account in my name and directed my municipal salary there. I created encrypted copies of our joint statements. Every time Adrian left a suspicious invoice at home or forwarded a financial document to our shared address, I preserved it. 3 months later, provincial investigators contacted me. A former Mercer Urban employee had independently reported irregular project payments. The investigators did not ask me to trap Adrian. They asked only whether I could verify records already connected to our household. So I lived 2 lives. By day, I attended budget meetings, packed Sophie's lunches, washed football uniforms, and listened to her practice the violin. By night, I documented transfers that seemed to circle through contractors before returning to companies Adrian controlled. Now, as Adrian flew toward Lisbon believing he had defeated me, every choice he made was becoming evidence. By morning, he had transformed his betrayal into an online performance. His first photograph showed him and Vanessa beneath the tiled arches of Lisbon's Rocio station. New chapter. No apologies. Next came breakfast on a terrace overlooking the Tagus River, then a rented convertible beside a luxury hotel in Cascais. Friends and business acquaintances filled the comments. Life is too short to stay unhappy. You finally chose yourself. Some marriages end long before people admit it. One woman from our neighborhood wrote, "Claire always seemed more interested in stability than love." I almost replied. Instead, I closed the application. Sophie entered carrying the lighthouse. She had added 3 tiny paper figures beside it. "This one is you," she said. "This is me, and this is Dad coming home from the sea. It's beautiful. Can we send him a picture?" I took the photograph because refusing would punish her for his absence. We sent it without a message. Adrian viewed it within minutes, but did not respond. At noon, an email arrived from him with the subject, "A sensible way forward. Claire, my lawyer will send separation papers. If you cooperate, I may allow you to remain in the house until spring. Fighting me will waste money you don't have. Vanessa and I intend to build a life here, and I won't let guilt interfere. Accept what has happened and make this easier for Sophie. You have no financial power and no leverage, Adrian." I forwarded it to Priya. Her reply contained 2 words, very useful. In Lisbon, Adrian's celebration was already beginning to fracture. He and Vanessa were drinking wine in their hotel suite when his phone began vibrating. His chief financial officer called 4 times. His business partner, Graham Bell, called twice. 3 project managers left urgent voice messages. "Aren't you going to answer?" Vanessa asked. "They depend on me for every decision," Adrian said, with a pleased smile. He returned Graham's call. It went immediately to voicemail. Then a notification appeared from Pacific Crest Pension Fund, the largest investor in 2 Mercer developments. Effective immediately, Pacific Crest is suspending further capital contributions pending an independent review of financial reporting. Adrian sat upright. Another notification followed. The city of Burnaby had placed Mercer Urban Group's vendor status under review. A lender paused the release of construction funds. The board scheduled an emergency meeting without him. "What is happening?" Vanessa asked. "Corporate maneuvering. 3 major partners don't suspend business because of maneuvering. I'll handle it." But when he called his office, nobody answered. That evening, Adrian tried to pay the hotel's security deposit. His premium card was declined. He tried another, declined. His banking application displayed a red notice, "Transactions temporarily restricted." He refreshed the page, entered the password again, and swore. "Try the account you moved the money into," Vanessa said. "That is the account." The color left her face. He called the bank. After 20 minutes on hold, a representative returned. "Mr. Mercer, certain assets are subject to a legal preservation order. I cannot provide additional details by telephone. Those are my assets. You will need to speak with your legal representative. I am in another country. I need access now. I'm unable to remove the restriction." The line ended. Vanessa stood by the balcony doors. "You told me the money was clean." Adrian turned sharply. "What does that mean?" "You said the company review was routine. You said your marriage was already legally finished. You said this trip was paid for." "It is paid for." "Then why did the hotel just ask me for my card?" For the first time, Vanessa was not looking at him as a powerful man who had chosen her. She was looking at him as a liability. Back in Vancouver, I carried my fireproof case into a government office near the courthouse. Priya sat beside me. Across the table were Martin, 2 investigators, and a representative from the Financial Crimes Unit. The recorder clicked on. I described the duplicate invoices, unexplained transfers, project companies, and conversations with Adrian. I explained how I had separated only my employment income and never entered accounts that were not lawfully available to me. Martin opened a thick report. Your records allowed us to compare household transfers with payments already reported by a former employee. One investigator placed Adrian's farewell message on the table. Mr. Mercer made a serious miscalculation yesterday, she said. For months, funds moved through numerous corporate and personal accounts. By gathering most of the available money into one account under his sole name, he connected transactions that had previously appeared separate. He made the trail clearer, I asked, considerably. One destination, one beneficial owner, and a written admission that he initiated the transfer immediately before leaving Canada. I thought of his boast. By the time you understand what happened, we'll be gone. Adrian had mistaken distance for safety and control for intelligence. After the meeting, I stood beneath the courthouse awning while cold rain darkened the pavement. Priya joined me. You did well, she said. I don't feel victorious. You're not supposed to. This is the father of your child and the collapse of the life you expected. Relief and grief can exist together. My phone rang. The lead investigator spoke briefly. Portuguese authorities have confirmed his location. He has been instructed not to leave his registered accommodation while the international financial process continues. They had found him. I thanked her and ended the call. There was no dramatic satisfaction, only a long breath I felt I had been holding for half a year. Mercer's board removed Adrian from operational control. Investors demanded audits. Contractors produced emails they had previously claimed not to possess. Several questionable vendors turned out to share addresses, directors, or payment instructions with companies connected to Adrian. No single document I preserved proved everything. Together, however, the records told a story his confidence could not erase. Adrian began calling me from unfamiliar numbers. I let each call go to voicemail. His first message was angry. You had no right to interfere with my accounts. The second was defensive. You don't understand the business arrangements. The third came after midnight and sounded frightened. Claire, please. We can solve this privately. I sent all three to Priya, then a fourth voicemail arrived. Tell Sophie I love her. That was the only message I played twice. When Sophie finally spoke to him by video, I remained nearby but outside the camera frame. Adrian looked exhausted. The polished coat was gone and the hotel wall behind him was bare. When are you coming home? Sophie asked. He hesitated. I have some things to sort out. Did you leave because I was naughty? His face changed. For once, there was no performance in it. No, never. I made choices that had nothing to do with you. Why didn't you say goodbye? He looked away. I should have. Sophie's chin trembled. That isn't an answer. I had never been prouder or sadder to hear her speak. The separation proceedings began 3 months later. Adrian appeared remotely, accompanied by 2 lawyers. He no longer wrote that I had no leverage. Now his legal team requested mediation and discretion. At the first session, he tried to recover his old authority. Claire, none of this needs to become uglier, he said. You took our daughter's education savings and left her without saying goodbye. I intended to replace the money. With what? The funds under investigation? His lawyer touched his arm, warning him not to answer. The mediator redirected us towards custody and household finances. Adrian's text messages proved more damaging than he expected. They showed planning, financial coercion, and deliberate abandonment. His email offering to allow us to stay in the family home demonstrated how he had used money to threaten stability. The court granted me primary residence of Sophie and exclusive temporary use of the townhouse. Adrian received scheduled video contact and a structured plan for future visits, subject to his return and the resolution of legal restrictions. The university funds were partly restored through assets preserved by the court. I was not suddenly wealthy. I had my salary, a modest emergency account, and a mortgage that required careful budgeting. But I had what Adrian believed he had taken from me: the ability to choose. The following months were neither glamorous nor easy. I sold his unused sports equipment, canceled expensive subscriptions, and learned to repair a leaking tap with online instructions. Sophie woke from nightmares and sometimes refused to speak to her father. I found a child therapist who helped her understand that anger and love could occupy the same heart. I also began examining my own life honestly. Adrian's affair was not the first betrayal. Long before Vanessa, there had been small betrayals, dismissing my work, controlling information, making affection conditional on obedience, and teaching me to doubt what I clearly saw. I had called those things compromise, because admitting the truth would have required change. One evening, Sophie found me painting the study pale blue. "Dad liked it gray," she said. "I know. Do you like blue?" "Very much." She picked up a roller. "Then why was it gray?" The question was innocent, but it contained the whole history of my marriage. Because I forgot I was allowed to choose colors too. She considered this and dipped her roller into the tray. "Let's make one wall yellow." We did. A year after the message outside Cedar Grove Academy, the criminal and civil cases surrounding Mercer Urban were still moving through the courts. Adrian returned to Canada under legal conditions and rented a small apartment. Vanessa did not return with him. Their relationship had ended quietly once the hotels, cars, and easy money disappeared. I never contacted her. She had participated in the cruelty, but Adrian alone had made vows to Sophie and me. I refused to build my recovery around another woman. Adrian's first supervised visit with Sophie lasted 90 minutes. She carried her lighthouse model, now repaired with tape along one side. When she came out, she was quiet. "How was it?" I asked. "Strange. Do you want to talk?" "Not yet." I respected that. On the drive home, she reached across the console and held my hand. "He said sorry," she whispered. "How did that feel?" "Good and bad." "That makes sense. Do I have to forgive him today?" "No. Forgiveness is not a bill someone can demand you pay." She leaned back, visibly relieved. That winter, Sophie and I began saving for a trip. Years earlier, she had seen photographs of Portugal in a school book and dreamed of riding Lisbon's yellow trams. For a while, I feared the country would always feel contaminated by Adrian's betrayal. Then I realized I did not want his choices to own an entire place on the map. The next summer, we flew to Lisbon together. We stayed in a cheerful guest house with blue shutters rather than a luxury hotel. We ate warm custard tarts dusted with cinnamon, listened to street musicians in Alfama, and laughed when Sophie tried to pronounce Portuguese street names. We visited Belém Tower, where she studied the stone balconies as if inspecting her cardboard lighthouse. One afternoon, we stood at Miradouro da Senhora do Monte while the city glowed below us. Red roofs, church domes, the silver river stretching toward the Atlantic. Sophie slipped her hand into mine. "Is this where Dad came with Vanessa?" "Somewhere near here, probably." "Does it make you sad?" I thought carefully before answering. "It reminds me of a sad time, but right now, standing here with you, I feel happy." She nodded toward the view. "So a place can have two stories?" "Yes, and we get to decide which one we carry forward." That evening, we rode tram 28 as golden light washed over the buildings. Sophie pressed her face close to the window, delighted by every steep hill and narrow turn. My phone remained inside my bag. I was not monitoring Adrian's mood, waiting for an accusation, or wondering which version of the truth I would be given. For years, I had thought security meant preserving the shape of our family at any cost. I now understood that a home held together by fear was not secure. It was merely quiet. Outside a small restaurant, Sophie and I shared a plate of grilled fish, while a guitarist played nearby. She raised her glass of lemonade. "To our new story," she announced. I touched my glass to hers. "To our new story." Later, walking beneath strings of lights, I remembered the exact moment Adrian's message appeared outside the school. He believed 4 cruel sentences would erase my future. He believed money was the same as power, departure was the same as freedom, and distance was the same as escape. But the message meant to terrify me had documented his intention. The transfer meant to impoverish us had united the very funds investigators were trying to trace. The flight meant to place him beyond consequence had exposed his confidence and timing. Every weapon he aimed at me became evidence because I did not react the way he had trained me to react. I had not won because I was more ruthless than Adrian. I survived because I paid attention, sought qualified help, protected what was legally mine, and waited for facts instead of chasing his lies. At the guest house, Sophie placed a postcard of Belem Tower beside her bed. "Mum," she said as I turned off the lamp. "Yes? Are we safe now?" There had been a time when I would have promised that nothing bad could ever happen again. I no longer confused comfort with honesty. "We can't control every difficult thing," I told her. "But we tell each other the truth, we ask for help, and we don't let anyone make us believe we are powerless. That is how we keep each other safe." She smiled sleepily. "That's better than Dad's surprises." I kissed her forehead. "Much better." On our final morning, we watched the sunrise over the Tagus. Ferries crossed the water, cafe owners unfolded chairs, and the city slowly awakened. Nothing about the view belonged to Adrian. Nothing about Portugal belonged to the life he had tried to create by abandoning us. It belonged to anyone brave enough to begin again. Sophie leaned against me as the first sunlight touched the river. I thought of the woman I had been outside the school, stunned, frightened, but already holding the proof that would change everything. She had believed she was simply refusing to panic. In truth, she was taking the first step out of a marriage built on control. Adrian had written, "By the time you understand what happened, we'll be gone." He had been wrong about both parts. I understood far more than he imagined. And the person who was truly gone was the woman who once believed she needed his permission to survive.